Russia refuses to make concessions in peace talks. Russia celebrates strategic initiative after seizing less than 1% of Ukraine in only 1 year. Zelenskyy announces plans to expand production of domestic air defense systems. Russia's foreign ministry stated that it welcomes U.S. efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine, but emphasized that Moscow will not make any concessions. The statement was made by Deputy Foreign Minister Sergey Ryabkov. He noted that there will be no compromises on the key objectives of the so-called special military operation. According to him, Russia intends to maintain its position unchanged.
We welcome the Trump administration's efforts to seek reasonable solutions and reasonable outcomes. Various versions of this plan are part of the negotiation process, but there can be no question of making concessions or abandoning our approaches to the key issues at hand, including in the context of the special military operation. The problem lies in the presence or absence of political will to strictly implement the understandings reached by the leaders in Anchorage. On the other hand, we remain committed to the Anchorage outcomes and will continue to act within that framework, relating current developments specifically to the basic principles formulated there by the two presidents. Sergey Ryabkov, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister at a Federation Council roundtable on global information dynamics.
So here's the thing. Russia has drawn up a plan and has given it to Trump through Trump's special envoy, Witkoff. In this plan, Russia wants all it never achieved in Ukraine, all territories and all demands its propaganda claimed for 4 years on TV and the web, and never even got in reality. Russia literally controls less ground in Ukraine now than 4 years ago. But Russia invested billions of dollars in propaganda and just enshrined its delusional wishes in its own constitution. And Russia says in that peace deal that it wants it all, and that all also into that very peace deal. So here we go. Russia, the aggressor, makes America the follower, to squeeze Ukraine, the fighter, to a capitulation. Moreover, America, the follower, wants Europe to follow. U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll used the growing threat and boasting coming from Moscow as a way to sell a quick peace deal that would be, let's call a spade, Ukraine's capitulation. It was a stark warning to a skeptical audience of Western diplomats who gathered in Kyiv last week to hear the Trump administration present its Russia-friendly peace plan for Ukraine. Driscoll told diplomats that for years, Moscow had been launching missiles at Ukraine almost as fast as it could produce them. According to him, Russia is now manufacturing so many that it's building up an ever-growing stockpile of long-range weapons, and that is why everybody should obey Russian whims and make Ukraine capitulate. Washington will provide Ukraine with security guarantees following a peace agreement, writes Politico. Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized that such commitments are a priority for the U.S. The White House insists that any peace plan must include these guarantees. Meanwhile, some European countries are concerned that the U.S. could tilt the deal in Russia's favor without considering human rights and international law. The situation with America promising Ukraine guarantees after it de facto capitulates to Russia is so absurd that even Russian opposition can't hold the nerve and actually speaks it all out. You know, this is the best show Putin can hope for. Not a single straight answer. It's not about how many weapons or ammunition you have. It's about, are you willing to fight and die? Oh, it's nice. You have the Canadian-led NATO brigade in Latvia. But what are the orders for this brigade? Will they shoot if Russians cross the border? We know the answer. It will take ages to negotiate. I still didn't hear a clear response. I can't even imagine in the first place. How can we even discuss a deal made by Trump's business partner? It's a real estate deal to enrich Trump's family and sell Ukraine? How can we seriously discuss that Ukraine will have to give up fortifications that are saving Europe? NATO is not strong. NATO is not strong. And NATO doesn't exist. It's a fake. NATO, just 4 letters. The reason you're all sitting here and celebrating it, because Ukrainians are dying for it every minute. It's a massive sacrifice. If not for Ukraine to confront Russia, Russian tanks would already be in Poland, You all suggested that Ukraine should give up. For 4 years, Ukraine has been fighting in the name of the whole of Europe. NATO was built to fight only one war, not to go to Afghanistan, not to go to Syria, just one war, to save free Europe from Russian aggression. Ukraine is the only country that is fighting this war now, and NATO is still discussing, should we accept them or not. Ukraine is the only country that is fulfilling NATO's obligation, and we owe them everything. Putin and all the others, they are celebrating your ways now. The Russians have allies, such as North Koreans, Cubans, Africans, volunteers. And we are still talking about escalation. We have everything, military, political, economical power on our side. And we are still losing the war. He is right. Ukrainians dying, and not only on the front line. In 2025, the number of Ukrainian civilians killed by long-range weapons increased by 26%, while the number of wounded rose by 75%, the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission reported. This year, Russia has significantly stepped up the use of long-range weapons, leading to a sharp rise in civilian casualties in major cities. For example, in Kyiv alone, civilian deaths in the first 10 months of 2025 were nearly 4 times higher than in all of 2024. Across the country, residential buildings and civilian infrastructure continue to be destroyed, and the strain on Ukraine's energy system is growing. After snagging less than 1% of Ukrainian territory in a whole year, Russia insists it's still in control and moving forward. The Washington Post points out that Moscow's grand strategy isn't flashy breakthroughs, but slowly draining Ukraine while crossing its fingers that Western support eventually fizzles out. And there is a reason why Russian dictator Putin believes Russia is winning. Because he himself built a system of fear and oppression, and now his commanders are forced to report what he wants to hear, not a real situation. All these amazing blitzes and breakthroughs in the combat zone, including the claimed capture of Kupiansk and almost all of Pokrovsk. Meanwhile, independent analysts confirm only minimal crawling progress at an enormous cost. Journalists note that a banner reading "He who fights wins" behind Putin during a visit to a Russian command post reinforces the illusion of victory and projects confidence in inevitable success. And of course, Putin uses these exaggerated claims to bolster his image and put pressure on international partners in general and in particular on Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Russian troops continue assault operations in the Kupiansk direction. The enemy is attempting to advance toward Kupiansk-Uzlove. According to fighters from the Buravy Brigade, the attacks are mostly carried out in poor weather, with fog and rain making aerial spotting nearly impossible. Russian units move in small groups, slipping between Ukrainian positions, but most are destroyed, and the wounded are forced to retreat. On this front, Moscow keeps switching tactics, mixing massive assaults with heavy shelling and the use of various types of drones. Ukraine must maximize the production of its own weapons, particularly air defense systems. This is a guarantee of protection, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated. On Wednesday, a meeting of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's staff took place. Several key topics were discussed, with the first focus on air defense.
Our Ukrainian production is our guarantee of protection. Ukrainians cannot depend on whether something can be sourced from the global market or from partners' stockpiles. Production targets must be met on time, with personal accountability at every level.
Looking at what America and Russia are calling Plan A, European countries are preparing a Plan B, and this plan is about money, reports Politico. Russian money in case EU fails to agree on using frozen Russian assets as a reparations fund for Ukraine. Belgium, where most of these funds are held, still fears legal consequences, which is delaying the process. In Brussels, officials are discussing how to support Ukraine if a decision isn't ready by the EU summit on December 18th. One option is a temporary EU loan to help Ukraine at the start of 2026. This would involve collective borrowing by EU countries of up to 90 billion euros, with the remainder covered by bilateral assistance.
We will not slow down in our support for Ukraine. We will support the Ukrainian people for as long as necessary. And we want to make the frozen Russian assets available for precisely this purpose. Putin must realize that he has no chance of winning this war at the expense of European freedom and peace. This is the guiding principle of our policy on Ukraine in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we want this war to end as quickly as possible. But an agreement negotiated between great powers without the consent of Ukraine and without the consent of the Europeans will not be the basis for a genuine, sustainable peace in Ukraine. That is why unity in Europe, unity with Ukraine, and unity in the transatlantic alliance are now crucial.
When the EU talks about support, the Czech Republic shows it in action. A national campaign has begun in the Czech Republic to raise funds for interceptor drones for Ukraine. Each drone costs around 60,000 crowns, and so far, over 5 million crowns have already been collected. The campaign has the backing of the chief of the Czech General Staff, Karel Ryabkov. Since Russia's full-scale invasion began, Czech activists have already supplied thousands of drones to help Ukraine defend itself. Let me remind you about a gift for Putin. Recently, in just 48 hours, the Czechs raised 12.5 million crowns for a Flamingo missile. They are now preparing for new negotiations with the rockets manufacturer Firepoint, suggesting that the gift set could expand. Thanks to everyone contributing, every crown helps protect lives and strengthen Ukraine's defense. Today is Thanksgiving, and we express our sincere gratitude to the American people for their friendship, support, and partnership. You, the people of the United States, Ukrainian people say thank you.
Wishing a happy and blessed Thanksgiving to Donald Trump, Melania Trump, and the entire American people. We deeply appreciate all the support, which has saved so many lives in Ukraine and helps us defend our independence each day. We are very glad that our relationship is constructive and look forward to further positive progress in diplomacy to finally end for good Russia's war against our people. We sincerely hope that dignified peace and guaranteed security will become our joint achievement. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on X social network.
And thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel to stay informed of the latest updates. Goodbye.